Tom Bennett had been climbing for as long as he could remember. The mountains were his second home, the towering cliffs and rocky peaks offering him the freedom and peace he couldn't find anywhere else. He wasn't like the casual hikers who took the well-beaten paths. No, Tom preferred the challenges that came with exploring uncharted terrain. That was how he had found himself on a solo expedition in the rugged wilderness of Wyoming. It was a place few had ventured, the kind of spot that seemed to be off the map, a true wilderness untouched by modern hands. This particular day, the air was crisp and cool, the kind of morning that made you feel alive with every breath you took. Tom had set up camp the night before, and now, as the first rays of the sun hit the cliffs, he packed his gear with a quiet excitement. His goal was simple: climb a path no one had ever thought to climb before. He had studied the area for weeks, poring over old maps and satellite images. There was a cliff face, a steep and jagged rock wall that seemed almost impossible to scale. But to Tom, that was precisely the reason why he was drawn to it. It promised to test his skills, to push him beyond his limits. As he started his ascent, the silence of the mountains wrapped around him like a blanket. The only sounds were the crunch of his boots on loose rocks and the occasional gust of wind rustling through the trees below. The higher he climbed, the more the world below seemed to fade away. The blue sky stretched endlessly above, and the vast expanse of rugged wilderness surrounded him. For Tom, this was where he felt most at peace, the weight of the world disappearing with every step he took higher. Several hours into the climb, Tom stopped to rest on a narrow ledge. He took a long sip of water and surveyed the landscape below. The valley was beautiful, untouched by time, and it was a sight that made all the hard work of climbing worth it. But as he sat there, something caught his eye, a faint outline in the rock that didn't seem to belong. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the light, an illusion caused by the shadows of the cliffs. But as he squinted, he realized that it wasn't just a shadow. There, half hidden by a thick tangle of moss and vines, was a door. Tom's heart skipped a beat. It didn't make sense. The area was far from any signs of human habitation. There were no nearby cabins, no mining operations, nothing that would explain the presence of a door in the middle of the cliff face. It looked ancient, the wood darkened by years of exposure to the elements. But despite its weathered appearance, the carvings on the door were intricate and well-preserved. The symbols etched into the wood were unlike anything Tom had ever seen. He had seen many old ruins and artifacts during his adventures, but nothing like this. He stood up slowly, his curiosity getting the better of him. His mind raced with questions. Why was there a door here? Who could have built it? And more importantly, why was it hidden so far away from civilization? He stepped closer, his boots crunching on the stones as he approached the strange door. The vines that covered it were thick, almost as if nature itself was trying to keep it concealed. Tom reached out and gently pushed the vines aside, revealing more of the door's surface. It was made of heavy wood, dark and weathered from centuries of exposure to the elements. The carvings on it were strange, almost like symbols or writing, but unlike anything he recognized. The door had an aura about it, as if it was hiding something important, deep inside the mountain. His fingers traced the edges of the carvings, and for a moment he almost felt a shiver run down his spine. But Tom was no stranger to the mysteries of the wild. This was just another puzzle, another challenge for him to solve. He didn't hesitate. He reached for the handle, and to his surprise, it moved easily under his grip. The door creaked as it slowly opened, and a dark, musty air spilled out from behind it. Tom stepped back, his heart racing with anticipation. What lay beyond the door? He had no idea. It could be an abandoned shelter, a forgotten mine, or even a natural cave that had been hidden for ages. But there was something about the door that told him it was more than just that. There was something significant behind it, something that wasn't meant to be found. He pushed the door open a little further, peering inside. The space beyond was pitch black. Tom couldn't see a thing, not even the faintest outline of the room. He reached for his headlamp and clicked it on, casting a beam of light into the darkness. The light revealed a narrow passageway, its walls smooth and almost unnaturally even. The floor beneath him was covered in dust, but there were no signs of recent disturbance. It was as if no one had been here for centuries. Tom hesitated for a moment. He knew he should turn back. This wasn't part of his plan. There were risks involved in exploring something like this. It could be dangerous, even life-threatening. But the pull of the unknown was too strong. His curiosity, the same curiosity that had driven him to climb the highest peaks and explore the most remote corners of the world, pushed him forward. He took a deep breath, secured his gear, and stepped through the door. As soon as he crossed the threshold, the temperature seemed to drop. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of something ancient. It felt like he was stepping back in time, entering a world that had been frozen in place for hundreds, if not thousands of years. The light from his headlamp flickered slightly as he took cautious steps deeper into the passageway. The walls around him were smooth as though they had been carved by human hands. There were no natural features, no jagged edges or rough surfaces. It was unnerving. This wasn't a cave or a natural formation. It was something else entirely. The deeper he went, the more the passageway seemed to stretch on, as if it was leading him somewhere far beneath the earth. It was silent, save for the faint echo of his footsteps and the occasional creak of the old wood behind him. His mind raced with possibilities, ancient ruins, a hidden underground city, or even a long-lost treasure. But with every step, his sense of unease grew. The passage was too perfect, too unnatural, and there was something about the air that felt wrong. Tom stopped for a moment and listened. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. He glanced back, but the door he had come through was no longer visible. He felt an unsettling chill creeping down his spine, but he shook it off. He was a seasoned adventurer. He had faced danger before, and this was no different. It was just a door after all, right? But as he stood there, a creeping feeling of dread began to settle in. Something was waiting for him in the darkness ahead. What exactly, he didn't know. But the further he went, the more certain he became that he had just discovered something that wasn't meant to be found. The question was, what would he do next? This part of the story is just the beginning of Tom's exploration, creating an atmosphere of suspense and curiosity. Let me know if you'd like me to expand any specific details or make adjustments. Tom stood still for a moment, the weight of the silence pressing in around him. The passage ahead stretched into the unknown, its walls smooth and unyielding, almost as if they had been crafted by human hands. It wasn't a natural cave. That much was clear. The space felt unnatural, as though it had been waiting for someone like him to find it. But Tom wasn't sure if he should feel excited or uneasy. The curiosity that had driven him to climb in the first place now gnawed at him, urging him to press on. He had always believed that there was more to the world than what met the eye. Hidden places, forgotten histories, and ancient mysteries were what drew him into the mountains. This was just another discovery, another chapter in his adventure. But this was different. With a steadying breath, Tom continued down the dark corridor. His headlamp illuminated only a small circle of the path ahead, but the shadows beyond seemed to stretch endlessly. The passage was narrow, the walls pressing in on either side. But Tom moved forward without hesitation. The air grew colder as he advanced, and with each step, the quiet seemed to deepen. It was as if the very world around him was holding its breath, waiting for something. As he walked, Tom's mind raced. What had he stumbled upon? Who had built this passage? The carvings on the door hadn't been like anything he'd ever seen before. They had a strange, foreign quality, as if they belonged to a time or culture long forgotten. But why was it hidden here, in the middle of nowhere? He had heard rumors of abandoned mines and lost cities in the mountains, but he had never taken them seriously. Could this be one of those forgotten places, a remnant of a past civilization? Or was it something else entirely? Tom couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something far more dangerous than he realized. The longer he stayed, the more the sense of unease grew. The whispering winds outside had long since faded, and now all he could hear was the soft shuffle of his boots on the ground and the faint hum of his headlamp. It wasn't enough to break the silence, though. It was the kind of silence that felt like it was watching him, studying his every move. He paused again, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. His heartbeat quickened, and his breath seemed too loud in the quiet. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see something or someone standing behind him. But the passage was empty, the dark stretch of rock as still as the rest of the cave. Tom frowned and pushed the uneasy thoughts from his mind. He had been in dangerous situations before, and he had always trusted his instincts. Now more than ever, he needed to keep his focus. Tom's headlamp flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls around him. He cursed under his breath, tapping the light to try and get it working again. It was a reminder of just how isolated he was deep inside this hidden passage. If something went wrong, if he got trapped or injured, there would be no one around to help. He was alone. Just the mountains, the darkness, and whatever lay ahead. When the light finally stabilized, he continued on, the beam slicing through the thick shadows. The passage seemed to twist and turn, each corner leading to more darkness, more questions. The air was thick with dust, and the faint smell of something ancient lingered in the space. Tom couldn't place it, wood, stone, or something else entirely. But the smell made his stomach churn. It was like the scent of something long forgotten, left to decay for centuries. As he walked further, the passage began to widen. The walls, which had been close on either side, now stretched out, creating a larger space. The ceiling above him was higher, and the air, though still musty, seemed to grow fresher. The change in the environment didn't calm him, though. If anything, it only deepened his sense of unease. What kind of place was this, and what could it have been used for? The floor beneath Tom's boots was uneven, scattered with loose stones and gravel. He stepped carefully, mindful of every step. His heart raced again as he saw something up ahead, barely visible in the low light. His headlamp illuminated what appeared to be a doorway, carved into the stone wall. This was different from the original door he had discovered. This one was smaller, hidden in plain sight, almost as if it was designed to be overlooked. Tom's curiosity surged again. He moved toward the doorway, his steps slow and deliberate. The closer he got, the more the silence seemed to weigh on him. The air grew colder, and he could feel a chill seeping into his bones. He reached out to touch the door, his fingers brushing the cool stone. The carvings on the door were similar to the ones on the large door he had found earlier, but these were more worn, as if they had been touched by many hands over the years. They were faded, barely visible to the naked eye, but Tom's sharp eyes caught the details. Strange symbols, lines, and shapes, symbols that seemed to tell a story, but one that Tom couldn't understand. As he studied the door, a shiver ran down his spine. He felt an overwhelming sense that he was not alone, that something in the dark was watching him. But when he turned around, the passage behind him was still empty, the darkness stretching endlessly in both directions. He felt a knot form in his stomach, his instinct screaming at him to leave. But the lure of the unknown was too strong. This was what he had come for. This was why he climbed, to uncover what others couldn't see, to discover what had been, hidden from the world. Tom hesitated for only a moment before he decided to open the door. His hand gripped the cold stone and pushed. The door moved slightly, creaking under the pressure. As it opened, a cold gust of air rushed out, carrying with it the faintest scent of something ancient. Old wood, musty stone, and something else. The sound of the door moving echoed through the passage, louder than it should have been, as if the walls themselves were responding to his actions. With the door open just a crack, Tom took a deep breath and pushed it all the way open. The cold air rushed past him, the musty smell growing stronger. He couldn't see much beyond the doorway, only darkness. But he had come this far. He had to know what was inside. As he stepped through the door, the temperature dropped even further, sending a chill through his body. The passage beyond was narrow, like a hallway with walls that seemed to close in on him. The floor was uneven, and as he took each step, he could hear the faint creaking of wood beneath his feet. He felt a surge of excitement mixed with dread. What was he walking into? What had been hidden in this mountain for so long? With his heart pounding in his chest, Tom continued forward, unable to turn back. The deeper he went, the darker the passage became. His headlamp illuminated only a small circle in front of him, but the shadows beyond seemed to stretch endlessly. Something wasn't right. He could feel it in the pit of his stomach. But Tom had never been one to back down from a challenge, and this was no different. Whatever lay ahead, he was determined to see it through. This section builds the tension and suspense while keeping Tom's curiosity and determination at the forefront. Let me know if you'd like me to adjust anything or expand further on certain aspects. Tom continued down the narrow passage, his heartbeat thundering in his chest. The cold air felt heavier, and every step seemed to echo in the silence, amplifying his anxiety. It was as if the mountain itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to uncover something he wasn't sure he was ready for. He tried to steady his breathing, pushing down the unease that crept up his spine. The headlamp he carried barely pierced the darkness ahead, but it was enough to make out the rough texture of the walls, which were unnaturally smooth and almost too perfect to be natural. He had been inside the cliff for what felt like hours now, moving deeper into this strange tunnel. The passage twisted and turned, curving in ways that made it seem like it was designed with purpose, not just worn down by the passage of time. His boots crunched on the loose gravel underfoot, a small comfort in the overwhelming quiet. He had been through caves, forests, and even abandoned structures before, but nothing had ever felt like this. Like something ancient was lingering just out of reach, watching him. The path ahead was dark, so dark that Tom could barely see the walls as they faded into blackness. It was unsettling, as if the tunnel was swallowing him whole, consuming the light from his headlamp. The temperature seemed to drop with every step he took, and he pulled his jacket tighter around himself, hoping to stave off the chill that seemed to sink deeper into his bones. There was no sound, nothing except the faint echoes of his own footsteps, and so he moved forward. He noticed that the walls were no longer just smooth rock. They seemed to have something else to them now. Faint markings, carvings that had been hidden by the darkness, began to reveal themselves. At first they were almost imperceptible, lines that could have been natural fissures in the stone. But as his headlamp illuminated more of the space, the markings began to make sense. They were symbols, intricate and detailed, swirling patterns that didn't look like anything Tom had seen before. They seemed to tell a story, but the language was foreign to him. He reached out, running his fingers along one of the carvings, and felt a strange tingle run up his arm. Suddenly, he stopped, in his tracks, his breath catching in his throat. Ahead, the passage opened up into a large chamber, its ceiling far above him, hidden in the darkness. He could feel the space before he could even see it. The air thicker, heavier, almost oppressive. It was as if the chamber was waiting for him to take another step. Tom's curiosity flared again, urging him forward. He moved cautiously into the room, his flashlight beam flickering across the walls. The floor was uneven, covered in dust and debris, but it was what he saw next that made his blood run cold. There, in the center of the room, stood a large object, encased in what appeared to be some kind of transparent material. Tom's heart skipped a beat as his flashlight illuminated it further. It looked like a massive stone coffin, though it was clear that the object inside was not a human body. The shape was wrong. It wasn't quite human, but it wasn't an animal either. It was a grotesque figure, its form twisted and misshapen, as though it had been altered by something otherworldly. The creature, or whatever it was, lay motionless, its body curled up in a fetal position, its features almost too horrifying to look at. Tom couldn't help but take a step closer. His instinct screamed at him to turn back, but his fascination with what lay before him was too powerful. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the creature in the stone coffin, which seemed to pulse faintly, as though it were alive, even in its petrified state. The stone that encased it was smooth like glass, and as Tom leaned in closer, he could feel a strange, unnatural heat emanating from it. His fingers tingled, and his heart raced. He wasn't sure if it was fear or some other emotion, but the pull was undeniable. It was as though the creature was calling to him, its very presence beckoning him forward. Tom took another cautious step, his breath shallow, his mind swirling with questions. What was this thing? Where had it come from? And why had it been hidden so deep within the mountain? He had uncovered ancient ruins before, but nothing had ever felt like this. This was different. This was something more. He couldn't explain it, but he knew that whatever this was, it wasn't something the world was ready to see. He was the first to lay eyes on it in centuries, maybe even longer. The air in the chamber felt thick, heavy with an unspoken energy. Tom's thoughts raced as he wondered what the creature was and, more importantly, why it had been preserved in such an unnatural way. Could it have been some sort of ancient relic? A creature from a long-forgotten civilization? His mind buzzed with possibilities, but none of them felt right. It was as if his very presence in the chamber was disrupting something, and the air around him seemed to thrum with tension. The symbols on the walls, which he had initially thought to be random carvings, now appeared to be a part of the creature's existence, tied to its very essence. They were a warning, perhaps, an ancient message left behind by the people who had sealed it away. Suddenly, a sharp sound broke the silence. Tom jumped, his heart racing as he looked around, searching for the source of the noise. It had come from the direction of the creature's stone coffin. A low, guttural sound filled the room, like something was moving within the stone, pushing against its prison. Tom's flashlight flickered, casting wild shadows across the room as the sound grew louder. It was unmistakable now. The creature inside was alive, or at least trying to come alive. A rush of panic surged through him, and he instinctively backed away, his legs shaking with fear. He had to get out of here. Whatever this was, it wasn't something that was meant to be disturbed. His mind screamed at him to leave, but his body wouldn't move. He was frozen, caught in the terrifying stillness of the room, unable to tear his eyes away from the coffin. The sound grew louder still, a low, rasping noise like something struggling to break free. Tom took a hesitant step backward, but the ground beneath him shifted. He stumbled, and for a brief moment, his hand brushed against the stone coffin. Jolt of electricity shot through his body as he touched it. It was like nothing he had ever felt before, an intense burning sensation that left him gasping for air. His hand recoiled, and for a moment he thought he might faint from the shock. But before he could recover, the noise grew to a deafening roar. The stone coffin trembled, and the creature inside began to stir. Tom's blood ran cold as the surface of the stone began to crack, tiny fissures forming along its surface. Something was waking up, something ancient and powerful, something that should have remained buried forever. Tom's mind raced, his instincts screaming at him to run. But he was rooted to the spot, his body frozen with fear as the creature inside the stone coffin writhed and shifted. It was only a matter of time before it broke free, and Tom had no idea what would happen once it did. This section deepens the mystery and builds the tension, keeping the audience engaged with Tom's growing fear and curiosity. Let me know if you'd like to expand on any particular detail or adjust the pacing. Tom's heart raced as he stumbled back from the stone coffin, his eyes locked on the cracking surface of the stone. The sound of something struggling to break free from within was deafening now, echoing through the cavernous chamber like a low, rumbling growl. His hands trembled, and he could feel the sweat on his brow despite the cold air around him. He had never felt so small, so insignificant, standing in the presence of something so ancient and powerful. Whatever lay within that stone coffin was not meant to be disturbed, and yet here he was, standing at the threshold of its awakening. The cracks in the stone deepened with each passing second. The rumble grew louder, and Tom could feel the ground beneath him vibrate as if the very mountain was shaking in response. His instincts screamed at him to run, to get out of there before whatever was inside broke free, but his legs felt like lead. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was it some kind of ancient creature? A forgotten god or demon sealed away by the people who once lived here? The symbols on the walls, the strange markings. Everything about this place felt like a warning, a message from a time long gone. But Tom hadn't listened. Now, He was paying the price. With a final deafening crack, the stone coffin shattered. Tom jumped back, his pulse pounding in his ears as dust and debris filled the air. The chamber seemed to hold its breath for a moment, as if everything was waiting for the creature to reveal itself. Tom's heart hammered in his chest, his mind screaming at him to run, but his feet were rooted to the ground, paralyzed with fear and fascination. He could barely make out a shadowy shape moving within the broken stone. Something large, something alive. Then a low growl echoed through the chamber. The creature, whatever it was waking up. Tom's breath caught in his throat as the shape inside the broken stone coffin began to take form. It was massive, far larger than he had anticipated. Its limbs, twisted and gnarled, seemed to move with an unnatural grace as it slowly pushed itself free from the remains of the stone. The air in the chamber grew heavier, the temperature dropping even further, and Tom felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over him. He knew he had made a mistake coming here. Whatever this creature was, it wasn't something meant for the world above. It had been hidden for a reason. The creature's eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light, locked onto Tom. There was no mistaking the intelligence in those eyes. This was no mindless beast. It was aware, conscious, and it was staring right at him. Tom's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment he thought he might lose control of his legs. But he didn't run. His curiosity, that relentless pull to discover the unknown, kept him rooted to the spot. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the creature even as it began to rise to its full height. It towered over him, easily twice his size, its body covered in scales that shimmered with an otherworldly glow. For a moment, everything was still. The creature stood there, its massive form silhouetted against the dark shadows of the chamber, and Tom could do nothing but stare. The creature's breath came in slow, deep gasps, its chest rising and falling with an almost rhythmic motion. The air between them felt thick, charged with an energy that Tom couldn't explain. He could feel it deep in his chest, like a vibration that seemed to resonate with something primal inside him. Then, without warning, the creature let out a loud guttural roar. The sound reverberated through the chamber, echoing off the stone walls and shaking the very ground beneath Tom's feet. He staggered backward, his heart pounding in his ears. The creature's roar was followed by an eerie silence, a silence so profound that it felt like the whole world had stopped moving. Tom's breath was shallow, his eyes wide with fear and wonder as he tried to comprehend what he was witnessing. For a long moment, the creature didn't move. It simply stood there, watching Tom, its glowing eyes never leaving his face. Tom's mind raced. What was it waiting for? Why had it been sealed away? And why had it been released now? He had no answers, only the overwhelming sense that he had made a terrible mistake by disturbing it. Slowly, the creature took a step toward him. Its movements were slow, deliberate, as if it was testing the ground beneath its feet. Each step sent a ripple through the air, and Tom could feel the weight of its presence pressing down on him. He was frozen in place, his feet unwilling to move, his body paralyzed by the terror that gripped him. The creature took another step, its massive form looming larger with every movement. Tom's thoughts were jumbled, his brain struggling to process what was happening. Was it going to attack? Would it destroy him? Or was it simply studying him, trying to understand why he had disturbed its slumber? The creature's eyes locked onto his again, and Tom felt a strange connection. Something deeper than fear. Something that made his heart race even faster. It was as though the creature was reading his thoughts, understanding him in a way that defied logic. The silence stretched on, broken only by the creature's slow, rhythmic breathing. Tom's mind screamed at him to run, to flee before it was too late, but his body refused to obey. He stood there, rooted to the spot, watching the creature inch closer. The air in the chamber seemed to thicken, the pressure building with every passing second. Tom's heart was racing so fast now that it felt like it might burst from his chest. Then, just as the creature was within arm's reach, it stopped. It tilted its head slightly, its glowing eyes still locked onto Tom's. For a moment, it seemed almost curious. as if it was considering something. Tom held his breath, unsure of what would happen next. Would it attack? Would it speak? Or was it just waiting for him to make the first move? The creature took another step back, its massive form moving fluidly, and Tom felt the strangest sense of relief. It wasn't coming after him. It was retreating. But why? Before he could understand what was happening, the creature turned away from him and moved toward the far end of the chamber. It was like it had made a decision, like it was no longer interested in him. Tom stood there watching as the creature disappeared into the shadows, its massive form melting into the darkness. For a long moment, Tom didn't move. He couldn't. He was still processing what had just happened. What had he seen? What had he just witnessed? The creature, whatever it was, had been alive. Alive in a way that defied everything Tom knew about the world. And now, it was gone, retreating into the depths of the mountain. But the question lingered in his mind. Would it come back? Tom knew one thing for certain. The creature was not the only secret hidden in this mountain. And as he stood there in the eerie silence, he realized he was no longer just an adventurer. He had stumbled upon something far bigger than himself, something that could change everything. And that was a discovery he wasn't sure he was ready for. This section keeps up the tension and builds the mystery around the creature, making Tom's experience more unsettling and suspenseful. Let me know if you'd like any further changes or additions. Tom stood in the darkness, his body tense, his heart still racing as the echoes of the creature's growl faded into the silence. The air was thick with tension, and he could barely breathe, as though the entire mountain had wrapped itself around him, trapping him in its secrets. The creature had retreated, but the question remained. Why? What had it sensed in him that made it step back? Or had it just been studying him, waiting for something? The questions swirled in his mind, each one more terrifying than the last. He stood there for what seemed like an eternity, his mind racing, his body frozen in place. His headlamp flickered, casting wild shadows on the walls around him. But it did nothing to ease the sense of unease that gnawed at him. The chamber was still, deathly still, and the silence was only broken by the sound of his own ragged breathing. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, that the creature wasn't gone for good. It had just retreated. But why? And for how long? Tom's instincts were screaming at him to get out, to leave this place before it was too late. His feet, however, refused to move. He felt trapped, paralyzed by the overwhelming fear and curiosity that had taken root deep within him. He had come so far, discovered something so incredible, and now the weight of what he had uncovered felt unbearable. He needed answers. But at what cost? Slowly, Tom began to move, his feet dragging through the dust-covered floor. His hands shook as he reached for his pack, fumbling for his supplies. He needed to find his bearings, to calm his racing mind. As he unzipped his bag, his fingers brushed against a small object, a compass his grandfather had given him years ago. He had never used it before, but now, in this strange and terrifying place, it seemed like the only thing that could guide him. The compass, however, seemed to do little to calm his nerves. He was deep inside the mountain now, and it felt as though every step he took brought him further into the unknown. Every crack in the stone, every flicker of light from his headlamp, seemed to hold a hidden meaning, as if the very walls were alive, watching his every move. Tom knew he needed to leave, but something deep within him pushed him forward. The answers were here somewhere, and he couldn't leave without them. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The creature had retreated, but that didn't mean it was gone. It was still there, somewhere in the dark, waiting. But Tom couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more, something deeper hidden in the mountain that he needed to find. What had the creature been guarding? Why had it been sealed away for so long? And most importantly, why had it reacted the way it had? Tom's thoughts were interrupted by a soft sound, a scraping noise like something moving in the shadows. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. The creature? Or was it something else? His heart skipped a beat as he slowly turned his head, his eyes searching the darkness for any sign of movement. His flashlight flickered again, and in the brief moment of darkness, he saw something, a shape moving in the shadows. It was quick, fleeting, but it was there. His mind raced. Was it the creature? Or was it something else entirely? Was there more to this place than he had realized? His senses were on high alert now, every muscle in his body tense. He couldn't see anything clearly, but he could feel it. A presence, something watching him from the shadows. Suddenly, the scraping noise came again, louder this time, followed by a low growl. The sound was unmistakable. It was the creature. And it was close, too close. Tom's legs finally obeyed, and he turned, sprinting down the passage as fast as he could. His heart pounded in his chest, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he pushed himself harder. He had to get out of there. He had to escape before it was too late. But no matter how fast he ran, the growling seemed to follow him, echoing in the dark. The creature was coming, and it was getting closer. His thoughts raced as he searched for a way out. The passage seemed endless, stretching on forever, twisting and turning like a maze. Tom's headlamp flickered once more, casting eerie shadows across the walls. He stumbled, nearly losing his balance, but he pushed forward, determined to escape. The growling was louder now, closer, and Tom could hear the sound of something, heavy moving behind him. He dared not look back. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to keep running, to keep moving. But his legs were growing weaker, his energy fading fast. Then, just as he thought he couldn't run anymore, the passage ahead opened up into another chamber, even larger than the last. Tom skidded to a halt, his heart in his throat as he scanned the room. It was different, more natural, less eerie. But there was something in the center of the room that caught his attention. A narrow opening in the far wall. It looked like an exit, a way out. Without hesitation, Tom sprinted toward it, his heart pounding with hope. The creature's growls were growing fainter now, as if it was losing interest, or perhaps it had decided he wasn't worth the chase. Either way, Tom didn't care. He just needed to get out of this mountain. He reached the opening, squeezing through the narrow passageway as quickly as he could. His body ached, his lungs burning from the exertion, but he pushed on. The light at the end of the tunnel was growing brighter, and he could taste the fresh air outside. He was almost there. As Tom stepped through the opening, he emerged into the open air, the sunlight blinding him for a moment. He stopped, breathing deeply, his body shaking from the adrenaline and fear. He was outside, safe, for now. The mountains stretched out before him, their jagged peaks framed by the blue sky. But as Tom looked back, the entrance to the passage was gone. The mountain had swallowed it whole. The creature, the chamber, the mystery, it was all hidden again, as though it had never existed. Tom stood there for a long time, trying to make sense of what he had experienced. But he knew one thing for certain. He had uncovered something that no one else ever would. And whatever it was something that the world wasn't ready to know. As he walked back toward his camp, Tom couldn't help but wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. Would the creature return? Would it come after him? And what had he really discovered in that mountain? The answers remained buried in the darkness, waiting for the next person brave enough or foolish enough to find them. But Tom wasn't ready to go back. Not yet. Maybe someday he'd return. But for now, the mountain had its secrets, and he had his own story to tell. And as he made his way down the mountain, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't done with it yet. This section provides a sense of closure while keeping the mystery alive. Tom escapes, but the creature and the secrets of the mountain remain unresolved, leaving the door open for future exploration. Let me know if you need any further adjustments.